I never loved Lizzie the way a wife is supposed to be loved. And what's to say, I'm not sure I even understood what true love is. Lizzie was the kind of person who always knew exactly what she wanted. In every circumstance, she was in control, leaving me no chance to take the initiative. Throughout our 7 years of marriage, I didn't feel like a husband, but rather a partner in comfortable cohabitation. We never fought, but we never enjoyed each other's company either. It was just a marriage, an empty shell with no passion or warmth. Our intimacies were so predictable that I think I could fall asleep in the middle of the process and not even notice. That all changed when I started noticing little things that, had I been in love, I probably would have overlooked. She started wearing new, beautiful lacy lingerie, but she wouldn't show it to me. Meetups with girlfriends and trips to the spa became frequent and regular. She spent more time on her makeup, hair, and every time she left the house it looked like she was preparing for a fashion show. This was a wake-up call for me. I was no fool and realized that this change was not for me. The private detective confirmed my suspicions pretty quickly. Lizzie wasn't careful, and she wasn't trying to hide anything. Her affair with a coworker named Alvin was thriving. They were like teenagers obsessed with each other. I'd seen pictures and videos, the same lace sets I'd never seen her wear, and their amorous glances. They were savoring every second, every encounter. They were like rabbits. But what did I feel? Nothing. Emptiness. Maybe a little relief. I didn't love her, and that knowledge gave me freedom. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum or make a loud scene. Instead, I did what I always do best. I started planning. I carefully transferred all the money from the joint account to my personal account, leaving Lizzie with only a couple $1,000s. She didn't even notice. She was so absorbed in her new romance. Cameras and wiretaps, it wasn't hard. My friend helped me install everything quickly and discreetly. I knew that as soon as I went on a business trip, Alvin would show up at our house. It was only a matter of time. The evening before I left, I told Lizzie that I was going away for a week for heavy negotiations that promised to be excruciatingly boring. She listened to me with cold politeness, not even bothering to pretend to be interested. We stood in the hallway, and I suddenly caught myself kissing her on the cheek, as if to thank her for not even pretending to miss me. She remained silent, and it was such an absurd moment that I almost laughed out loud. But I restrained myself. Restraint is my strength. I got in my car and headed not to work as planned, but to the hotel. I got a room, bought myself a drink of whiskey, and put everything in its place, ready for the show. I knew it wouldn't be a couple hours before Alvin showed up at our house. And you know what? I was even happy about it. I felt no anger or jealousy, just a strange satisfaction. I had some interesting events ahead of me, and I was ready to savor them. I was right. It wasn't more than half an hour before Alvin came flying into our house with a wide, satisfied smile on his face. Apparently, they were both excited to see me leave, but had no idea that a surprise was already waiting for them. It was hard not to chuckle at the thought of what awaited them. The neighborhood kids to whom I had offered a little work were already ready to begin their task. We agreed that they would ring the doorbell and run away on my signal. Once they started making love, my show would begin. When they finally reached the climax, the first bell rang. I watched from the screen as Alvin jumped off the bed in a panic before he could even pull on his pants. Lizzie was running around the room with a wild look on her face, trying to find her clothes. Their reaction was so comical that I laughed out loud. Alvin, realizing his own ridiculousness, hid behind the curtain in a hurry, while Lizzie opened the door, made sure no one was there, and slammed it shut with a look of bewilderment. Once they calmed down and, chuckling, went back to their games, I was ready for the next stage. I gave them a little time to sink back into their passions, and once they had made love again, I signaled the children again. The second bell rang, and Alvin this time fell off the bed out of fear and tried to crawl to hide under it. It was incredibly funny, him, naked, crawling under the bed like a child afraid of monsters. Lizzie, already clearly on the verge of a breakdown, rushed furiously to the door, but again found no one. She was pounding her little fists on the wall as if that would give her back control of the situation, and I was sitting in the hotel, sipping whiskey and enjoying this comedy show. I knew I could keep this up indefinitely, but it was important not to overdo it. I needed to wait for their nerves to finally give way. I watched them sit on the bed, silent, waiting for the next cue. Their tension had peaked. And then, Lizzie, apparently deciding it was over, brought out a hidden bottle of wine, the very one I had specially prepared for them. When I saw her with my bottle, everything inside erupted with anger. What insolence! I thought. She was going to celebrate our freedom with my own gift. It was the perfect moment for the final act. I called. They flinched at the same time, as if on cue, and this time they looked at each other with real horror. Lizzie opened the door and saw the very package I'd left with the kids' help. It contained wine, candy, and a letter. I watched her face go pale as she opened the note. My words written there were simple, but their effect was stunning. I see everything. And I know everything. They stood like two hunted animals surrounded by unknown danger. Alvin whispered something, clearly panicked, and Lizzie, with trembling hands, put the note aside. You could see the tears rolling down her face. I could have stopped at that point. But for some reason, I wanted more. I wanted to see them finally break down, realizing that I'd been with them all along. Lizzie was having a real panic attack. I sat watching through the bedroom camera and couldn't help but marvel at how quickly she lost control. She thrashed around the room like a cornered animal, her hands clenched into fists, and with every thump on Alvin's chest, her desperation only grew. He stood dumbfounded by her behavior, clearly not expecting this outcome. Apparently she hadn't thought of a scenario in which a carefully thought-out affair was suddenly exposed so brutally and without warning. She was crying, sobbing, her voice shaking, and Alvin tried to soothe her, whispering softly in her ear and stroking her shoulders. But his efforts were useless. Lizzie couldn't go back to her usual state. Tears filled her eyes, her emotions were running wild. It was sad and funny at the same time. Funny because this was all just the beginning. She didn't know yet that a much bigger blow was about to hit her. The divorce papers were due to be delivered in just a couple days, and then her world would finally come crashing down. This was just the prelude to the real nightmare I had in store for her. Alvin, it seemed to me, had no idea what lay ahead. The very kids I'd hired for a couple dozen had already successfully held up their end of the bargain. Flat tires, a few deep scratches across the body of his new car, and the cherry on the cake, a pile of shit right on the windshield. I imagined his face when he came out of the house and saw this gift of fate. He deserved it. I can't say I was mad at him, but he knew full well that Lizzie had a husband and had knowingly taken that risk. And I don't forgive betrayal. So, Alvin, if you'll excuse me, enjoy my surprises. If you asked me why I did it, I couldn't give you a clear answer. Maybe it was just a sense of justice that was lingering inside me. Or maybe I couldn't stand the very fact that I was being lied to and used. If she didn't love me or want to be with someone else, why couldn't she just say so? We would have parted ways like normal adults. But no, Lizzie chose the circus. So now she's getting her part in the act. Yeah, maybe I do seem angry. Maybe some people will judge me for doing this to Alvin. But there are rules in life, and if you break them, be prepared to bear the consequences. Alvin knew what he was getting into, and now he must take my gift for granted. I had no pity for either of them, though. The evening went beautifully for me. I sat in my hotel, watching the drama unfolding before me, and even the whiskey seemed better than usual. The television, after all of this, was just a soothing backdrop for my thoughts. The whole plan had unfolded perfectly. With a feeling of complete satisfaction, I finally fell asleep. But morning brought something even more expected. I knew this moment would come sooner or later. The courier sent word that the divorce papers had been delivered. And of course, immediately afterward, my phone was flooded with messages, calls, voice recordings. Lizzie, in a complete panic, trying to reach me. She begged, cried, screamed in desperation, begged me not to divorce her. But for me, everything was crystal clear. I felt calm, even detached. It was the only right way out of this situation. The marriage she and I had built was a mistake from the start. And now that it was finally falling apart, she needed to be alone with herself, to face the truth and realize that her past didn't matter anymore. And who knows, if Lizzie could see it from the other side, maybe it would be a chance for her and Alvin to have a new, happy life. I didn't get home until evening. The house greeted me with silence, the kind of oppressive, unsettling emptiness that made me feel cold inside. My phone had been ringing off the hook with messages and calls from Lizzie all day, but I wasn't interested in answering her hysterical attempts to explain myself. All she had left were words, but none of them mattered anymore. When I finally decided to take her next call, I said only one thing: I filed for divorce. Our life together is over. Pack your things and get out tonight. And I hung up. Her response was predictable. She wrote more and more, trying to find a loophole, threatened, begged, and finally gave away her heavy weapon. She said she was pregnant. At any other time, maybe I would have flinched at those words, but now, there was no more trust inside me, not even a shred of it. If she was pregnant, I would wait until the baby was born and take a paternity test. I would never give up mine. But in her case, I was sure it was another desperate move, an attempt to keep me trapped. When I entered the house, I was met with this heavy emptiness. No screams, no tears, just silence. And a strange feeling inside me. Empty. Like something had finally fallen away from my soul, leaving a void that nothing could fill. Lizzie was gone. But that silence was more than the absence of her presence. It was the silence of a ruined life, the one we'd built together, but which had turned out to be a lie from the start. Do you know what I was thinking at that moment? As strange as it sounds, I wish I'd given up right away. I wish I'd gotten divorced when I felt we were out of love. Not prolonged the agony, not given it a chance to build up. And I certainly didn't try to live with someone I didn't love. A loveless marriage is the most destructive thing that can happen. And in the beginning, I thought it could be fixed. I was just stupid. Maybe that was my mistake. I chose her because of her beauty, because of the way she skillfully manipulated attention, her wit and charm that captivated not only me but everyone around her. But behind these colorful qualities there was an emptiness that I hadn't noticed before. Now I've realized that it's important to choose a person not by how they look or how they make you feel at first. You have to look deeper, to what's inside. I no longer allow myself to fall for looks and charm. Manipulation won't work anymore. A wife is more than looks and more than brains. It's the partner you build a life with. And if you don't have that, you have to leave before it all falls apart. The house was empty, but it was also a new chapter in my life. I'm not gonna let myself make the same mistakes again.